Depending where you're at, cedar trees might be one of your best resources for fire. Here in Kansas, we don't have birch trees. We don't have pine trees that are really good for finding fat wood. We don't really have any of those kind of well-known fire resource type trees. But one thing that we do have, at least in central and eastern Kansas, are cedar trees. Around here, they're usually known as either just cedar or eastern red cedar. Common names, there's a bunch of them. The scientific name, what it actually is Juniperus virginianus. And just like its scientific name suggests, it's really not a actual cedar tree. It's a type of juniper tree. We just call them cedar for whatever reason. They're very abundant out in especially eastern Kansas. They pretty much just pop up like weeds all over the place. But they really are an excellent fire resource. It's kind of a one-stop shop in a way for fire. The bark is very fibrous, and you can really work it into a good fiber that's ready to catch a spark off of a ferro rod. It also does a really good job at growing a lot of small fine twigs that when they're dead and dry, you can definitely use those to help you light a fire. You can gather up a bunch of those tiny little thin twigs and put a match to them, and they'll light very readily. The branches are really a good source of kindling wood because they pretty much give you your choice of thickness. It starts out as very fine branches and they work their way up. So just depending on where you get the wood from the cedar tree, you have your tinder, you have your kindling, and then it also works as quite a good fuel wood, both in the wider sections of branches and also the trunks themselves. Make great firewood. A good large piece of cedar trunk will burn for quite a long time. It may not necessarily be the best at giving you a whole bunch of coals, but it does provide some coals as well. I've heard cedar trees described as your kind of supermarket tree. It gives you everything you need when it comes to fire. And in certain parts of the country, like here in eastern Kansas, we have lots of these trees, so they're usually not very hard to find. No, in Kansas, we don't have birch trees, at least that grow naturally. We don't have pine trees that grow naturally where you can find good fat wood, any of that stuff, but we do have cedar trees. And they're definitely a nice resource that's available here. And in a lot of cedar trees also grow in a lot of other places. Most of the eastern United States, you have cedar trees. Cedar trees are an evergreen tree. Some of them are fairly small, some of them get fairly large. This is a pretty standard size tree here. Whereas over this direction, we have some much taller, statelier cedar trees. These ones have been growing here for quite some time. The trunks on those are much wider than the trunk on this tree here. The cedar trees, they have these, it's not like really a pine needle, but it's kind of if you can see this very well, it's kind of almost a scaly type of needle, where they have these little needle bits that kind of just lay down almost like scales on there. Sometimes in the younger trees, these scales are actually they don't really lay down, they actually kind of stick out, and they're quite sharp and can really poke you pretty well. Cedar, juniper trees also grow juniper berries. I don't know if these are exact ones that are used for stuff like flavoring gin and the like, but they're very similar, at least, and they are edible if you really want to eat them. This is an example of that cedar bark that I was talking about. So it's just pretty loose on the tree usually, and it's very fibrous. You can work a good piece of bark like this, you can really get that broken down into fibers very well that really make for great tinder. And these strips, they just come off. You can peel them off the tree. Just like that, come off pretty easily. Doesn't really even hurt the tree. There's more bark back there. But this bark really breaks up nicely into you can make a nice little bird's nest of this very fine, fibrous bark. So the trees are great for tinder. There's more of this great cedar bark here. You usually find some loose pieces, and that one was barely hanging on there. And pulling that off didn't hurt the tree whatsoever because it was ready to drop it anyway. It's just all this nice, loose, fine bark here. Excellent tinder. Now on some of the younger trees, sometimes it is a bit of a challenge to find enough of the loose stuff. Sometimes you might have to look around a little bit. Usually on the smaller, younger trees, you can find, at the very least, you can find a few smaller pieces that you can pull off pretty easily. It might not be as good and already as fibrous as this, but it is the same bark. When it comes to cedars, if you want the really best tinder, the stuff that's like ferro rod or friction fire ember ready, go for this inner bark and just scrape it with a knife. You get this really nice fuzzed up tinder. Really good stuff. What I'm scraping this off of is dead, so I can scrape and scrape and scrape. I'm not going to hurt this thing at all. On a living tree, you can get some of the same stuff, but you want to make sure that you don't go all the way through the bark into the wood, because that's where all the tree's vasculature is that moves the fluids and the nutrients up and down the tree. It's just right underneath the bark, and the tree really needs that to live. Although generally speaking, as long as you don't girdle the tree all the way around, it's not going to die. Some really, really fine tinder here. Really good stuff. Really good fine tinder. And here you can see laid out a few examples here of how you can pretty much get everything you need for your fire from the cedar tree. You have our bark for tinder, that fine fibrous bark. Now these fine little twigs, when these are dead and dry, you can snap off all sorts of these tiny, really fine little twigs. These are maybe about a quarter of a matchstick in width. Gather up a bunch of those. Those will really light up very readily. Further on down the same branch, you have thin sticks that are, just about a pencil width, and and everything in between. Here's a little twig that's maybe about a fifth of a pencil width. Keep going down the branch. You have ones that are maybe about a double pencil length in width there. So you get the fire started with that bark, and then you just kind of work your way up into larger and larger pieces. This is definitely all you need for tinder and kindling. And then you get to your fuel wood, and this is just a branch off of a cedar tree. It is, well, you can see in relation to my hand how wide it is. It's definitely big enough for fuel wood. And you pretty much have everything size-wise upwards from that. Now here's one that is considerably wider. This is actually a piece of trunk from a smaller cedar. This is a piece of trunk from a bigger cedar. You know, this one's a good probably 6 inches across. This, you know, a log this size will burn for quite some time. I wanted to show this in a little bit more light. Cedar on the inside has this really beautiful red, very, very red heartwood to it. It is a little bit redder when it's freshly cut, and that redness does fade a little bit. If you can see that on the inside, it's just a really rich red. And this is also the same stuff that they make cedar shavings out of for like rabbits and small animals. It's also the same stuff that they use in cedar closets and cedar chests. Moths don't like the smell of this stuff, so they stay away from it. But a very, very useful tree. Very, very useful for camping, bushcrafting. It's kind of your one-stop shop when it comes to fire. Hope that you've enjoyed this little video talking about cedar, the one-stop fire resource, and hopefully maybe you've learned something, and next time you're out in cedar country you might just look around for some and take advantage of the great resource that it really is. I forgot to mention one last benefit, is that it actually smells pretty nice when it burns. I got really used to that smell growing up and around campfires, and then I kind of went away to different areas, or just didn't really have as many campfires out in this area for quite a long time. And when I kind of came back and started camping out here and burning cedar again, that smell really brought me back pretty quickly. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you learned something, please hit like, subscribe to my channel if you want to see some more, and thanks for joining me.